but we'll keep watching this. As we learn more information, we'll have more for you on it. Okay, Arshad,
yeah.
go right ahead. Do you have something on this?
Does the State Department believe that Saudi Arabia is pursuing its anti-corruption actions, including the detentions over the weekend, in a fair and transparent manner?
I think if they choose to go ahead and prosecute these cases, we certainly anticipate that they would do it in a fair, just, and transparent manner.
But is the detention of these people in and of itself, leaving aside the question of subsequent prosecution, is the detention of these people being handled in a fair and transparent manner?
I could only go back to what the Saudi government has said, and the Saudi government, and I can't speak on their behalf, but they have laid out a case that these officials were guilty of corruption of sorts, alleged corruption of some sort. So I'm not going to go beyond what the Saudi government has said. We're not there on the ground to assess the cases of these individuals, so I'm not going to have any more for you on that.
But you are there on the ground. I mean, you have an embassy, you have contacts.
Well, we certainly do, but
Can
we're
I
not
finish?
there involved with those cases, Arshad. So I'm not going to have a lot for you on this. We are continuing to monitor the situation. They have assured us that any prosecutions that take place will be done in a fair and transparent manner, and we hope that they will hold up to that.
And then following up on Michelle's question, is it helpful for the government of Saudi Arabia to assert that it regards actions by two different by two different countries or players in two different countries as acts of war? Is that helpful? Is it helpful for it to say that it regards unspecified actions by Hezbollah as acts of war, and similarly to regard the missile as an act of aggression?
I think we have to look at the region in which they live. When we talk about concerns about terrorism and destabilizing forces in the region, there's no one that knows that better than some of the countries in that backyard. And so I think it's natural. I mean, imagine this. There was a missile shot into Saudi Arabia. The believed target was the airport or somewhere close by the airport. Imagine if that had happened here in the United States. It's shocking. I don't think it should surprise any of us that the government would consider that to be a potential act of terrorism. But beyond that, I don't have anything more for you, okay?
My question, though, is about whether it's helpful. I mean, let's take the case of Lebanon. Is it helpful for the Saudis to say they regard unspecified actions by Hezbollah as acts of war? You talk about the region. It's a region with a lot of ferment. Is that helpful for the U.S. government's point of view to hear that rhetoric?
I think we also know the kinds of activities that Hezbollah has been responsible for. I mean, as Americans, and we have talked about this here before, the Marine barracks bombing, responsible for killing hundreds of Americans. Our vice president went out to one of our Marine barracks here not too long ago to honor those that were killed. So it should be no surprise that Hezbollah is a terror organization. It should be no surprise that Saudi Arabia is upset when a missile gets launched into its territory. That's all I have for you on that, okay?
If Hezbollah is a terrorist organization, what about Kataib Hezbollah in Iraq, headed by a man whom the U.S. authorities had imprisoned at Camp Cropper for killing Americans? Isn't that also
Lori,
a terror organization?
I know. You and I, we covered this about a week and a half ago. I just have to refer you back to what we said at that time. Okay, I don't have anything new for you on that.
One of your responses to Arshad, you said they have assured us that they will handle these cases in a fair and transparent manner. When did they give you this assurance?
I have been told, I don't know who, but I've been told that that has been their pledge.
So there has been some kind of contact at a senior level.
I don't know at which level, but I know that there have been conversations
since the arrest or since the detention.
I know that there have been conversations.
All right, and
conversations have taken place.
And then just last one, do you have any thoughts at all about the rather interesting location of detention that these people are being held?
I have nothing for you on that. Okay.
Heather,
Shall we move on?
Just on Saudi Arabia really quick, when it comes to the internal problems going on or or whatever is going on in Saudi Arabia, on top of Yemen, Lebanon, with Iran, does this Secretary of the State Department believe that this provides a greater incentive or bolster the case for the issue with Qatar to be settled for Saudi Arabia to come to the negotiating table?
I certainly think it brings home to many players in the region that there are some very serious issues that they're dealing with that we're dealing with. We have followed the GCC dispute since, when did it first begin? May or so? How many months has this gone on? We still call upon all the parties to sit down and work out some sort of an arrangement, because we see that if they're not fully cooperating and working together, that the region can become further destabilized. So perhaps what is going on now will be sort of a wake-up call for the nations to work together and to come to some sort of get some sort of resolution.
And the Secretary made it seem like it was up to Saudi Arabia to come to the table and discuss. That Qatar was a willing party and the others were not.
Look, Qatar has said that it's willing to sit down and start negotiations. I don't recall where the Saudis are on this. For that matter, but I can check with our folks to see if there are any updates for you.
Given the Saudi role in that, and given the Saudi role in the war on Yemen, does the State Department not have some concerns that the current Saudi policies are themselves contributing to destabilization?
I think we know exactly where the responsibility lies in the region for much of the destabilization, and we've seen the activities of Iran. We've seen the activities of Iran in Yemen. We've seen the hand of Iran in Syria. We've seen the hand of Iran elsewhere, where Iran's government, and I should be clear about saying that, because we don't take issue with the Iranian people, we take issue with the government of Tehran. Where they show up, trouble tends to follow.
It sounds like full support for everything Saudi's doing.
Look, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying let's recognize the region that they are in. Let's recognize the destabilizing factors that are in that region.
Would you
Go ahead.
comment on the resignation of the Lebanese Prime Minister from Riyadh?
With what?
Would you comment on the resignation of Saad Hariri, the Lebanese Prime Minister, and doing it from the venue in which he did, which is Riyadh, Saudi Arabia?
Oh, in Riyadh, you said.
Riyadh,
Okay,
yes.
okay. Apologies. Look, we have had a good relationship with the government of Lebanon. As you may recall, the Prime Minister was here meeting with the President. I believe it was in the month of June that he visited the White House and did, I believe, press conference with the President. Our relationship with the government will not change. We'll continue to just follow and monitor the situation there. Okay.
Well, many of your allies would like to see a government or a future government of Lebanon that does not include Hezbollah. But in fact, the facts on the ground would dictate otherwise, because they represent a large portion of the Lebanese population. And in fact, they keep that formula on balance, so to speak. So what is your position on that?
They certainly have some representation on the ground there in Lebanon. Lebanon overall is a strong partner of the United States. They have strong national state institutions in the war on terror. The United States strongly supports the legitimate institutions in the Lebanese state. We expect all members of the international community to respect fully those institutions and the sovereignty and the political independence of Lebanon.
So you would not insist on a future government of Lebanon that excludes Hezbollah?
I don't. We strongly support the government of Lebanon, and we do regard, as you well know, Hezbollah to be a terror organization.
Does that statement of support mean that there is no consideration, given the current uncertainty of any kind of reduction or pause in assistance to the Lebanese army?
I'm not aware of any changes, but you could ask DOD if there's something more on that.
Were you
Hey.
given a heads up on
Hi.
the resignation?
I do not believe that we were. Let me double check that. Okay. All right. Shall we move on? Okay. Yes.
Hariri, and actually on that question, it overlaps a bit. As you say, he was here in June. He met the secretary, met the president. A warm word was said about it in public. He has now stepped down, apparently because Saudi Arabia felt that his government was a front for Hezbollah and Iranian influence. Do you think you've been taken in?
I'm not going to be characterized. I'm not going to characterize why this decision was made. I could refer you to him and refer you to his government to answer that question, but I'm just not going to.
That he didn't give you a heads up, or the Saudis didn't.
All I can say, and I'm just checking my notes here, and to answer your question, no, we were not aware that he was going to resign beforehand. Okay, let's move on. Lori, hi. What do you want to?
Believe that by supporting Prime Minister Abadi in Iraq, that is a way to contain Iranian influence in the region?
I think there are numerous ways to contain Iranian influence in the region, and one of them is a step that Prime Minister Abadi has recently taken. And if you look at the relationship, there's strengthening relationship with the government of Saudi Arabia. That's a real step in the right direction. They're all Arabs there. You've seen Saudi Arabia reopen the land crossing between Iraq and Saudi Arabia that had been closed for many years. They're taking steps in a positive direction. When we were at the United Nations, the government of Saudi Arabia and others talked about helping to finance some of the big major reconstruction projects in Iraq. We just saw a report that came out, I think it was in the news earlier today, about the level of devastation in Iraq. Understandably so, because there's been the big battle fought against ISIS over the past few years. So there's going to be a lot of money that's required to rebuild Iraq, and the fact that some of those nations are willing to take that on is pretty incredible. It was just not that long ago that the United States was paying for all those big reconstruction projects. Times have really changed. We're helping out, certainly, but governments in the area are stepping up and they're helping.
Do you see the Saudis as your partner in containing Iranian influence in Iraq through things like paying for reconstruction?
You know, I think we have some shared interests, and we have some shared interests in terms of terrorism and fighting terrorism and recognizing the malign influence of Iran in the region and around the world and other terror groups. We would like to see peace and stability in Iraq. We'd like to see peace and stability in Syria and elsewhere. And I think to the extent that we can work together with Saudi Arabia and with other nations, then we're better off as a result.
Okay, if I can just follow up then on this stability in Iraq. The Kurdish regional government has warned about that Iraq is deploying heavy weapons, including U.S. weapons, to the front lines with Kurdish forces while the talks are continuing. And it doesn't really look like Baghdad is so interested in a peaceful settlement. What is your comment on that deployment of weapons against the...
Lori, I would disagree with your assertion, first of all, okay? Last time we were here together was, I think it was a week ago today. And think about the change that has come in the past week alone, where you have had the Kurds and the Iraqi central government sitting down and actually having conversations together. It was not that long ago that they were firing weapons at one another. So the fact that they're willing to sit down and have a dialogue, something that we have been encouraging for weeks now, I think is a step in the right direction. We applaud those steps. We look forward to more conversations between them so that they can try to come to some sort of arrangement where they can adhere to the Constitution. We have had our ambassador, Ambassador Silliman. He was recently up meeting with Mr. Barzani, Netravan Barzani, in I believe it was just a few days ago up in Erbil. So I think some positive steps are being made. Okay? All right, Lori, this is not the Lori show today, okay? Some days it's the Matt Lee show, some days it's the Lori show, but let's move on, okay? Okay.